not just talk about how we are going to go progress ahead, we also talk about where does our India stand? What are the efforts taken by our own country to progress in this field? So very proudly, I would like to invite our first speaker, Dr. Saumen Gupta, sir. Sir is an associate professor and faculty of pediatric and geriatric rehabilitation from Sikkim, Manipal. Sir has done his PhD in cerebral palsy from Manipal University. I would like, without any further more delay, I would like to invite Sir to please start with his first session. Thank you.
Good morning, one and all. Are you able to view my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So just a minute. Requesting all the participants, if you have any query, you're free to put it in the chat box.
Okay. Good morning, one and all. I thank you for inviting me to the talk on perspective towards disability from dysfunction to function. Before we delve further into the topic, I would say that this talk consists of 4 subtopics. And before we go exploring how physiotherapy has influenced life of people with disability, I would like to emphasize that there is absence of metrics, or there is no single metric with which we can infer how and where physiotherapy has put India on global health map in shaping dysfunction to function. Before we discuss how physiotherapists can find metrics to highlight their increasing role in the field of disability and rehabilitation, we need to discuss how the perspective about disability has changed and how the change in vision of disability has enabled physiotherapists to work in field of disability. What we see now, for example, the increasing number of medals in the Paralympics is one of the reflection or indicators of rising role of physiotherapy in training disabled athletes alongside with coaches. This is just one visible role, while other roles have not been so visible. The other visible role we could talk about is role of physiotherapy in COVID era. So these are two of the many indicators of what physiotherapy in India has done. So before we embark on this talk, I have 2 pertinent questions. How the perspective in understanding of disability has changed over years, and how we have shaped dysfunction into function. Now, how the perspective has changed over years, this is pertinent so as to create an environment of inclusion of people with disability into the planning services, and setting a stage to make world aware of people with disability and the rights they have. This has been possible by having conventions, creating frameworks, creating an environment, and creating precursors. Before conventions, also, the people with disability existed, but their rights were never discussed. Their rights weren't similar to other citizens of the country, with no specific framework to acknowledge how they would be enabled to enjoy the rights accorded by the Constitution. The convention and frameworks at international level have given impetus. So this helps us in understanding how the government has worked from bottom to top and top to bottom approach through a signatory to United Nations. And with the input of these frameworks and conventions, we have been able to create awareness about people with disability and amalgamate certain frameworks in our constitution. If you look at the timelines of convention, the situation will become clearer. Before these conventions, the arena was disorganized, discriminative, and there was sign of stigma. Disability status was not canvassed in India's census from 1941 to 1971, and disability has been included from 1981 onwards, census of 1981 onwards, and there was only documentation of three types of disability. Then we have progressed from 1981 with the International Year of Disabled People to World Program of Action concerning disabled persons in 1982. And United Nations have declared Decade of Disabled Persons from 1983 to 1992. And there is an extension of this decade of disabled person regionally. So we have Asia Pacific decade of disabled persons from 93 to 2002. So between 93 and 2002, we have standard rules of opportunities, which was given by WHO, to which India is signatory. Then we have this introduction of Bivako Millennium Framework. There were priorities, Bivako Millennium Framework plus 5 for action 2002, and they have in depth spoken about people with disability and the rights they have. In 2006, we have this Convention on the Rights of People with Disability 2006, and this ushers a new era of People with Disability Act 2016 for India. But I would like to tell, before 2002 Bivako Millennium Framework, um, only one question was added to the census in 2001, and that was also added at the last minute. So 2006 convention is a landmark, and we have ushered into the era of Disability Act of 2016. Now, how we have shaped dysfunction into function? We have precursors, we have laws, we have policy, we have healthcare, we have introduced technology in healthcare. Now, if we will be talking about them one by one. Let's talk about the laws. Within these decade of disabled people that is extended from 93 and 2002 onwards, and before that, we have had Mental Health Act 1987, and then we have RCI Act 1992, then we have Equal Opportunity Act and Protection of Rights and Full Participation Act 1995, and then we have National Trust Act 1999. So all these things happened within the decade of disabled people from 1983 to 1992, and from 2002 onwards we have been working on rights of people with disability, and finally in 2016 we have this the law, Rights of People with Disability Act. Now, if you look at the policy document on Divyangjans released in 2021, the terminologies like participation, environmental barriers, moving from social model to from medical model to social model, and inclusion of terminologies like adoption of ICF in disability surveys. All these things have happened right now in 2021. So I must say the government machinery has caught up very fast. And we have provisions in the Constitution, that is Article 41 and Article 46 of the Indian Constitution, where they have spoken about people with disability and handicap along with the weaker sections of the society. So there are provisions in Article 41 which talks about provision of right to work and education and public assistance in cases of unemployment, old age, sickness, and disablement. Then you have Article 46, which lays down special care to the education and economic interests of weaker sections along with people with disability. Now, coming to the schedules, 11th schedule and 12th schedule. Now, when we talk about schedules, they are added documents to the articles. And originally, India had 8 schedules, and now we have 12. So, in those added schedules, we have Article 243G and 243W, which talks about social welfare of inclusion of welfare and the welfare of the handicapped and mentally retarded people. Now, these terminologies will also phase out subsequently. 12th schedule says there should be safeguarding of the interest of the weaker sections of the society, including handicapped and mentally retarded. Now, we come down to National Sample Survey, and the NSS questions have changed much from 2001 to 2011 to document the presence of people with dysfunctions or disability in India. So the objective of the survey was to estimate indicators which will become standard throughout the survey. So inclusion of incidence and prevalence of disability, causes of disability, age of onset, and difficulties faced by persons with disability in accessing public funding and public building and transport have been included. Arrangement of regular care providers, out-of-pocket expenses relating to disability are worthy indicators used in national sample survey. Now, we have come a long way from collecting crude information on disability to specific disabilities. And there was a document released along with the policy document, that is the NS National Sample Survey, 76th round. We have in this 76th round change in the definition and difference in the definition of people with disability, difference in classification of disabilities, and difference in procedure adopted to identify disabilities. So when we talk about schemes, there are a variety of schemes exist to increase the skill and accessibility of healthcare to people with disability. We have Deen Dayal Disability Rehabilitation Scheme. We have assistance to disabled persons for purchase fitting of appliances. There is a fund for awareness generation and publicity for disability. Unique Disability ID project, which has been implemented in Meghalaya. There is augmentation of braille presses. There are DDRCs, an increase in number of DDRCs. There is another campaign, which is Accessible India campaign or Sugamya Bharat Abhiyan, which is taking rounds. Research on disability-related technology and products have got impetus in the last 5 years. There is an incentive scheme for providing employment to the private employers. Then there is inclusion of states panel injury center in every state where 5 beds will be free for people with spinal cord injury. Now, when we talk about skill and accessibility and access to funds, there is National Fund for People with Disability and there is National Handicap Finance Development Corporation, and there are awards for empowerment of people with disability for people with disabilities. So the rehabilitation measures which has been taken by the present policy document are not just physical rehabilitation, but they are also working towards economic and educational rehabilitation so that people with disability have dignified life in the society and they have increased vocational education. And we are also working on our policy document also suggests that we are working in development of rehabilitation professionals. Now, there is implementation of healthcare insurance. One is Niramaya Health Insurance Scheme. Another is Swavlamban Health Insurance Scheme. The coverage limit for Niramaya is 1 lakh and Swavlamban is 2 lakhs. And Niramaya can be accessed only by people with mental disabilities. And Swavlamban Health Insurance Scheme can be accessed by all people with disability, which are given in the Gazetted Notification of 2016. So the premium is for people who have family income of less than 15,000, they have to pay 250 rupees. And for Swavlamban Health Insurance Scheme, 3,100 is the premium, where 10% has to be paid from the pocket and rest will be refunded by the government. Coming on to the technology and the technological advancements, ICMR has come up with a document, NLEAP document, where they have set priorities on availability of certain devices. Although it's a good start, but then it is underutilized. The 21 assisted technology products have been there since long before 2016, but it's a commendable action from ICMR to generate this list. Now, the national centers, the premier institutes like IITs and AIMS, they have collaborated and they have dedicated Center for Assistive Health and Technology. And IIT Madras has been, in the forefront of development of assistive technology. IIT Madras and IIT Delhi. IIT Bombay has also started, and they have developed certain assistive technologies for handicapped. Now, these are examples of assistive technologies. One is IncluNav is for interior navigation or navigation within a building for people with dementia. Then you have Mavi for mobility assistant for visually impaired. You have reading assistant for visually impaired. You have got smart cane device for visually impaired. You have got onboard device. That's the name of the device, which tells you the bus number and the routes at the bus stations and at the designated bus stops. Then you have Tech Read, which converts the written documents, the printed documents into braille, and the person is able to read Then you have certain good technological outcomes in the last 5 years. One is standing wheelchair, which is developed by TTK Healthcare at the IIT Madras. Then you have got outdoor mobility device, which is add-on mobility device, which converts manual wheelchair into electrical wheelchair. And there are some companies who are making frames, standing frame, sitting frame, and which can be used in different scenarios. Then you have installable swivel seat mechanism, where you can convert any car, any over the counter car which you get, and convert the seats into swivel seats without changing the basic structure of the car. Then you have mobile applications for the deaf. Then you have real-time braille converter, and then you have introduction of brain-computer interfaces, or BCI devices. And people have been working on it since many years. And I think we will have our first EEG controlled wheelchair in this year. Now, most of the institutions and most of the physiotherapy fraternity has shaped dysfunction into function, and we have been working with people with disabilities right from the starting. The job profiles and the extent of involvement in clinical areas is known. Most of the institutions highlight the teamwork approach, and it would be correct to say that physiotherapy is the strongest link in the chain of management of people with disabilities. And we have come a long way from impairment based management to shared goal setting by moving with the models. So we have, medical model where the healthcare professionals were the expert, and we have moved to political and relational models, or ICF models, where people with disability and healthcare professionals, and especially physiotherapists, are making shared goals and have shared goal setting. Now, role of PT as such, we have got different specialties, and when we talk about role of physiotherapy, there is no SOP or documentation on evidence of roles of physiotherapy. It will be better to identify role in terms of lead role, adjunct role, or supportive role, and we are working on types of functions, that is physical function, cognitive function, and social function. So, depending on the impairment, depending on the health condition, depending on the scenario, whichever is dealt by us in the lead role, that becomes our role. That is, if you look at this dysfunction in physiotherapist role metrics, you see that we are leading role. We are leading healthcare provider in physical function and cognitive function, but we are adjunct and supportive, providing adjunct and supportive role in social functions. So now when we talk about social function, and when we map out our roles with CBR matrix, there is the last domain of self-help group advocacy, and there we are providing supportive functions by being a moderator, or depending on the situation, or depending on the roles we are providing in CBR matrix, we become lead provider or adjunct provider or supportive provider. So I would say we have started mapping the roles of physiotherapist in CBR matrix, not necessary community-based rehabilitation matrix, meaning community-based rehabilitation physiotherapist. But if you look at the health domain, the education, the livelihood, the social domain, and empowerment, everywhere the physiotherapy has lead and adjunct roles to provide, especially the health, early education, and livelihood training, that is vocational rehabilitation, doing task analysis and doing vocational rehabilitation, providing recreation and leisure. We have been in forefront for improving physical functions. And when we talk about empowerment, advocacy, self-help group, and community mobilization, we are in adjunct and supportive group. So I think that would be a better way of delineating physiotherapy roles in the lives of people with disability if you map out your functions along with CBR metrics. Now we have started to take a humongous task to map physiotherapy roles through documentation, through research work, through the number of projects held, etc. Now we come to the ways we achieve more capability to deal with disability. Now we have answered two questions. We have answered, how we created the framework for people with disability, how we have contributed for people with disability. Now we can talk more of how we can improve our capabilities to handle disabling situations. Physiotherapists have been, in research. In the last decade, there are a number of, research studies coming out from India and, Indian researchers who are in Western universities or who are in foreign universities, and it becomes little difficult to gather data from PubMed, depending on the kind of role or the physiotherapists play in lives of people with disability. But I have known personally that there are many projects held by various physiotherapy departments around the country, and these projects are funded by national funding agencies and international funding agencies. Then there are a number of institutions which are imparting PhDs. The government institution, they are less. The higher education institutes, they are less in number, who are providing opportunities to physiotherapists, because the physiotherapists do not meet the eligibility criteria. Now, if we look at the Vidwan profile, which is created by Ministry of Education and Human Resources, you can identify that there are 465 people who have registered in the field of physiotherapy, academics and research, and there are 261 people working with rehabilitation, and there are many deactivated profiles, including mine. So, if you collate the whole list of people working for disability, that's huge, but we often do not hear about them. Then there is increase in number of workshops and conferences conducted in the last year, and this is what we need to bother about the research. When we talk about higher education, we have got masters and PhD, a lot more masters and PhDs which are coming out, but there are certain damaging trends, because there are substandard PhD being imparted. Government institutions have been left far behind, because sometimes we do not fulfill the eligibility criteria to enter the streams which would help in widening the scope of physiotherapy or increase knowledge. We are all consuming derived knowledge, but we have never come in the forefront to get first hand data. And there are a handful of physiotherapists who have postdoc and collaborations, and but they are handful. There is need of multidisciplinary education and horizontal growth, which would be achieved by National Education Policy 2020. I would suggest that we should shed this understanding that physiotherapy can only progress by delving into the fields of physiotherapy. If you know a little bit of technology, and if you pour into the field of technology and you go to the depth, I think it will be beneficial for the growth of rehabilitation in whole. Then we talk about practice and entrepreneurship. There are many physiotherapists who are entrepreneurs, but there is no credible source of information on the practice. It's more of information coming out of newspapers, the magazines. There are many physiotherapists who have made mark in sports sciences, and that is evident because we have been seeing how many sports associations have been, giving role to physiotherapists. There are many Paralympic there are many organizations who are training Paralympic athletes, and they have employed physiotherapists. So, there is a broader need to include people with disability into our curriculum, and there's a need for physiotherapists to be present at vocational rehabilitation too. We should be present at special education. We should be present at return to work and ergonomics, because um, finally we would be able to make a person with disability into a contributing member of the society.